And there are a number of moving factors in the ag economy today, from input prices to weather trends and spring planting. We now want to learn how these are influencing the farmland market. Luke Worrell with the American Society of Farm Managers and Rural Appraisers joins us now for a closer look, so we appreciate your time this morning, Luke. Now, I know that the Illinois chapter recently held their Land Values and Lease Trends Conference, and there's a big report that is released and presented during this event. So what were some of those major takeaways?
Yeah, first and foremost, thanks for having me on. But yeah, so we get together, us as an organization, the chapter of the American Society of Farm Managers, Rural Appraisers, and we look at the year prior and we do all of our due diligence and try to just sink our teeth into what happened. And so yeah, we just came out with this report. It's a labor of love for sure, but it's something we're proud about. And at the end of the day, Illinois saw very marginal decreases in land values throughout the course of 2025, to the point where honestly, I think many of us probably expected maybe a little bit larger decreases. How we go about this, Eliza, is we take the state and we break it up into 10 regions, and then each region really looks at all of the transactional data we can. And location, 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 right? So not every neighborhood in Illinois is apples to apples, but overall, Class A land was down around 3% in 2025. But beyond that, there was actually nominal change, almost no change in Class B and C acreage. And so we are seeing some softening, but maybe not as much as some would have expected. And we actually have even seen some increase in a more recreational type land. So every year, I sound like a broken record, I'm sure, when people hear me on stage, but every year is entirely interesting. Some years the numbers are bigger than others, but it was interesting nonetheless.
Sure, and I know a question that a lot of people probably ask you about is kind of the demographics of who is owning farmland. That's always a topic of discussion within ag in general. Has the demographics changed in regards to who are buyers and who are sellers from what you're seeing?
Yeah, great question. It's a common question. It's one we get all the time. It's one we take a look at not only there in March, but we also take a look at that um, in August when we're at the Farm Progress Show. So I guess to take a step back and just let the viewers know, we ask these questions to 80 plus professionals across the state, farm managers, appraisers, brokers, et cetera, et cetera. And while there is a place in time where some of the headlines show large institutional buyers, um, the majority of sales really still comes down to local involvement. If we look at the selling side first, just the sad reality is, I think 60% of all sales last year dealt with the settling of an estate. It's just the sad reality that people pass away, and a lot of times that leads to a sale of land. As far as other sellers go, it was kind of a hodgepodge of who else kind of chimed in on that demographic. Some of it were investors looking to diversify into outside of agricultural investments. Some were just kind of reshuffling the deck, 1031ing from one farm to the next. There was a handful of folks that were selling to pay down debt, but by and large, the number one runaway reason people were selling land in 2025 was the settling of an estate. Now, when it comes to buyers, it's similar. We saw projections and estimates that 60% of all purchases were done by a local farmer. On top of that, around 20%, we kind of show up as like a local investor. So looking at it a little bit differently, around 80% of all purchases we kind of lovingly call local money. At least here in Illinois, there was a local flavor to it. You do have around 10%, actually the numbers came to 12% of just out of area investors. These are just individual investors. And then about 8% of the sales were institutions. So while some of those big names grab the headlines and it's a good read, largely speaking, it's has always been kind of a local flavor, and we really don't see a huge shift in that.
Right, I appreciate you kind of breaking that down. That's kind of why I brought it up too, because people may hear certain things about who in and at what cost people are owning farmland, but really the reality is a lot of our local people and of course the states that are kind of involved in this as well. And keeping track of the land market is so important. I often say we don't have farmland factories, so keeping track of all the trends is really important. You have some really great insight here. And I know obviously you're out there in Illinois, and some people may be planting out there. So what are you hearing from growers?
Yeah, absolutely. If I could go back to, I meant to say this earlier, as a matter of fact, but just to view the value question out, just to give it more context, while we might have been down 3% in 2025, at our conference, we looked back, and since 2020, even if you take those marginal decreases we've seen over the last couple of years, we're still up around 50% in value since 2020, which is a huge number. So that was something I just wanted to clarify too, is even though we're seeing a small decrease, we're still up exponentially from a historical perspective. In regards to planting, yeah, up until we probably would have a different conversation on Monday if we had this call. So we were off to a really fast start. Here we're in Illinois, especially West Central. Central Illinois was way ahead of the game. I think, in fact, I just was doing some research. I think we're probably 10% farther along than the 5-year average on corn, and 18% farther along than the 5-year average on beans. So we really had a really nice window of opportunity. And the modern farmer is incredibly efficient, and so they were really rolling and doing a really good job. I know, talking to some guys, it's almost been too efficient, right? Those of us in ag like to worry.
Yeah.
So it was almost going too good. But we did have a large storm here that rolled through the area, most of the state, as a matter of fact, on Monday. So that'll slow things down just a bit. But all in all, progress is being made, and at a good clip.
Definitely love it. I know quite a few farmers out there in that area. I know that, yeah, they were itching to get out there, and maybe they're taking a little bit of a break with those storms that rolled through, but still great to hear that there's progress being made. So, Luke, thank you so much for joining us this morning to give us all those breakdowns. Broker and accredited farm manager Luke Worrell.